June 10, 1944, the Chateau at Lacaine, Normandy. The evening air hangs heavy with the scent of blooming orchards and diesel fumes from the wireless trucks parked haphazardly among the trees. Inside the grand dining hall, General der Panzertruppen Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg steps through the door, his boots echoing on the stone floor. He's just arrived, his uniform crisp, despite the day's chaos, his mind racing with orders from Field Marshal Rommel himself. The staff officers rise briefly, forks pausing mid-bite over plates of requisitioned French cuisine. Chief of Staff Generalmajor Sigismund Helmut von Dons nods curtly, his face etched with fatigue from 4 days of relentless invasion reports. You can almost hear the low murmur of conversation tactics, counterattacks, the unyielding Allied foothold on the beaches. Maps sprawl across tables in adjacent rooms, marked with red arrows pointing toward Cannes-Bayeux, the Normandy coast where hell broke loose just days ago. Outside, the camouflage netting over the command vehicles sways gently in the breeze, oblivious to the storm brewing overhead. Then a distant drone. Faint at first, like thunder rolling in from the channel, heads turn. Is it ours, the Luftwaffe, finally? No. The sound swells, mechanical and merciless, dozens of engines, closing fast. Von Schweppenberg freezes, his hand on the doorframe. "Flieger alarm!" someone shouts. Too late. Hawker Typhoons scream in low, their shadows flickering across the grounds like vengeful ghosts. Rockets hiss from under their wings, slamming into the orchard with eruptions of fire and earth. Vehicles explode in balls of flame, radio-masts crumple like matchsticks. The chateau shudders as the first wave pulls up, banking for another pass. Inside, glass shatters, men dive under tables. Von Dons rises to bark an order and a blast rips through the wall, silencing him forever. High above, North American Mitchell bombers lumber into view, their bomb bays yawning open. 500-pounders tumble earthward, precise as a surgeon's knife, carrying the headquarters into oblivion. Von Schweppenberg staggers, blood streaming from a shrapnel wound, his world dissolving in smoke and screams. This isn't war, this is annihilation from the gods. But to understand how a single raid could cripple the Wehrmacht's iron fist in the West, we must rewind to the tense months before the beaches ran red. In the shadowed halls of Berlin and the fortified bunkers of France, a fierce debate raged among Germany's top commanders, a clash of visions that would seal the fate of thousands. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the grizzled Oberbefehlshaber West, commanded the entire theater from his headquarters at Saint-Germain-en-Laye near Paris. At 68, he was a relic of the Kaiser's era, pragmatic and cautious. He believed in the classic doctrine, hold the panzers back, deep in reserve, ready to strike with overwhelming force once the enemy's intentions were clear. Paris as the pivot, a mobile hammer to smash any invasion inland. Enter General Leo Gehr von Schweppenberg, his subordinate commanding Panzergruppe West, a cavalryman turned tank expert. Von Schweppenberg had led armored charges in Poland, France, and the brutal steppes of Russia. He shared von Rundstedt's view, keep the 7 elite panzer divisions over 1,400 tanks, including the fearsome Tigers and Panthers clustered around Paris and in Belgium. Train them, maintain them, unleash them as a cohesive fist. Mobility is our strength, he'd argue in heated meetings. Let the static defenses bleed the Allies on the beaches, then we counterpunch. But one man disagreed vehemently, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox now helming Heeresgruppe B along the coast. Rommel had tasted Allied air power in North Africa, the relentless Jabos, the fighter bombers that turned convoys into scrap. You haven't seen what they can do, he'd snap at von Schweppenberg during inspections. The skies belong to them. Move armor by day and it's suicide. Rommel pushed for dispersing the panzers right up to the Atlantic Wall, ready to crush the invaders at the water's edge before they could dig in. The feud escalated to Hitler himself in Berchtesgaden. The Führer, ever the micromanager, split the difference in a disastrous compromise. 3 panzer divisions went to Rommel for immediate coastal defense. The rest stayed with von Schweppenberg's reserve, but with a catch. Hitler personally controlled their release. No one could move without his order. It was a recipe for paralysis. As spring thawed into summer 1944, tension coiled like a spring. Intelligence whispers of an impending invasion grew louder. Pas-de-Calais. Normandy? The 15th Army waited north, the 7th to the south. Von Schweppenberg drilled his crews relentlessly. The 12th SS Panzer Hitlerjugend, the Panzer Lehr, the 21st Panzer near Caen. They were the Reich's best veterans with kill ratios that made enemies blanch. Yet cracks showed, fuel shortages bit deep. Spare parts were scarce, and the Luftwaffe, a shadow of its blitzkrieg glory, outnumbered 30-1 by the Allied air armada. Reichsmarshal Göring promised fighters, but they never came. Von Schweppenberg dismissed Rommel's warnings as desert paranoia. Our panzers will roll unhindered, he confided to aides. The Allies can't bomb everything. June 5, 1944, storm clouds gather over the Channel. Rommel, convinced the weather would delay any landing, drives home to Germany for his wife's birthday. Von Rundstedt hosts a war game in Rennes, simulating an invasion at Calais. Von Schweppenberg retires early at his Paris HQ, unperturbed. Midnight strikes. Paratroopers drop like silent rain over Normandy. Gliders crash into hedgerows. By dawn, the horizon fills with ships over 5,000 vessels, the largest armada in history. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. Allied troops storm ashore under a canopy of naval guns and aircraft. In Berlin, Hitler sleeps. In Paris, alarms blare. Von Rundstedt's staff scrambles. Is this the main thrust, or a feint? The 21st Panzer, under Rommel's direct control, lunges toward Kemp, but the others wait. Hitler's order finally comes at 3 p.m. on June 6th. Release the reserves. Von Schweppenberg mobilizes, his columns snaking toward Normandy under cover of night. But the Allies own the daylight. P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoons prowl like hawks, rocketing anything that moves. The Panzer Lehr Division, elite and fully equipped, loses dozens of vehicles before even sighting the enemy. Bridges crater, roads choke with wreckage. It's a slaughter, reports filter back. By June 9th, Rommel races back, furious at the delays. He meets von Schweppenberg at Laeken, the new forward HQ. Hastily set up in the chateau's orchards, buzzing with Enigma machines and radio chatter. We must counterattack now, Rommel demands. Mass the panzers, strike at the British flank. Plans are drawn, a thrust toward Bayeux to split the beachheads. As the sun sets on June 9th, optimism flickers. The panzers are converging. Tomorrow the hammer falls. Little do they know, eyes in the sky and ears in the ether have already sealed their doom. June 10, 1944, 3:12 p.m., a farmhouse attic near the village of Thury Harcourt, 15 miles south of Caen. A young British signals officer, Captain Kenneth McNeil, wipes sweat from his brow and presses the headphones tighter against his ears. The attic smells of dust and old apples. Below, French farmers pretend to mend fences while two Royal Signal sergeants hunch over a Hallicrafters receiver the size of a suitcase. They are not supposed to be here. Officially, they do not exist. McNeil's pencil scratches furiously across a message pad. The German cipher traffic is thick today, Enigma chatter from Panzergruppe West, now relocated to Laeken after fleeing Paris. The voices are crisp, urgent, almost arrogant. Coordinates, fuel states. Attack timings, names, Rommel, von Schweppenberg, Dawns. The British have been reading the Panzergruppe's mail for weeks. Ever since Bletchley Park cracked the latest Enigma key they called Shark West. At 15:17, the jackpot bursts across the airwaves in clear German. Tomorrow, the 11th of June, a coordinated panzer thrust west of Caen. 3 divisions, 320 tanks. Starting positions, forming up points, even the exact orchard where the command staff will breakfast. McNeil rips the flimsy from the pad and sprints downstairs to the hidden transmitter. By 16:05, the intercept is on its way to Bletchley, to Uxbridge, to RAF Medmenum's photographic interpretation unit. By 17:30, a Mosquito photoreconnaissance aircraft streaks over Laeken at 28,000 feet. The pilot, a laconic New Zealander named Jimmy Fletcher, banks hard, cameras whirring. The film will be developed in a mobile darkroom under canvas at RAF Benson before the sun even thinks about setting. Back at 2nd Tactical Air Force Headquarters in Uxbridge, Air Marshal Sir Arthur Coningham, a man Rommel once swore he would shoot on sight, studies the fresh prints under a magnifying glass. There it is, the chateau, the orchard, the neat rows of radio trucks, half hidden under netting that looks pathetic from 400 feet. Coningham taps the photo with a pipe he never lights. Tell Le Mallory we found the bloody nerve center, Typhoons and Mitchells. Tonight, no warning. No second chances. Across the channel, the pilots are already being briefed. 184 Squadron RAF, the Rocket Typhoon boys, told only that the target is a high-value headquarters, possibly Rommel himself. The Mitchell crews of 137 and 139 squadrons are handed precise grid squares and a single instruction: level it. Leave nothing that can transmit. At 1938, the first wave forms up over Needs or Point. Isle of Wight, 48 Typhoons, wings heavy with 8 60-pound rockets apiece. Behind them, 24 Mitchells loaded with 500-pounders fused for 11-second delay, enough time to bury themselves in soft Norman soil and rip the guts out of anything underground. You can picture the cockpit of Typhoon pilot Flight Lieutenant Jimmy Kyle, 197 Squadron. The Merlin engine snarls at full boost, the slipstream howling past the open hood. He checks his watch, 1942, sunset in 3 minutes, perfect, the Germans relax at dusk. Their flak gunners smoke, their officers dine. Kyle thumbs the mic. Tally-ho, gentlemen. Let's give Jerry a proper good evening. Back at Locaine, von Schweppenberg has just finished dictating the final orders for tomorrow's attack. He allows himself a thin smile. The Panzer-Lehr is refueled. The 12th SS is blooded and eager. Even the skies have been quiet all afternoon. Perhaps Rommel was wrong after all. He steps outside for a cigarette under the apple trees, watching the first fireflies blink in the hedges. Somewhere high above, invisible in the fading light, Jimmy Kyle pushes the stick forward and begins the long, shallow dive that will erase an army's brain in less than 4 minutes. But the rockets and bombs are only half the story. The real weapon is information, perfect, pitiless, faster than any Tiger tank. And tonight, it is already too late for the men in the chateau to even suspect they have been betrayed by their own voices. The 4-minute apocalypse, June 10th, 1944, 1947. The sky above Locaine. Flight Lieutenant Jimmy Kyle rolls his Typhoon inverted at 8,000 feet, the world flipping upside down for a heartbeat. Then he snaps upright, the orchard grid square dead center in his gun sight. The chateau's roof glints dull red in the dying sun. He feels nothing yet, no anger, no pity, just the cold clarity that comes before the pull. Going in, he pushes the stick forward. The Typhoon howls earthward, Merlin screaming at 3,700 revolutions per minute. At 400 miles per hour, the ground rushes up like a green wall. Kyle's thumb hovers over the rocket trigger, 1,500 yards. 500 yards, fire. 8 rockets ripple off the rails in one brutal cough. White trails streak ahead, converging on the radio trucks parked nose to tail beneath the netting. The first pair hit the command caravan dead center. A yellow-white flash, then a secondary explosion as the Enigma sets and codebooks detonate. The blast wave rocks Kyle's Typhoon even at 300 feet. Behind him, the sky fills with streaking rockets, 47 more Typhoons diving in perfect sequence. A steel rainstorm, the orchard becomes a forest of fire. A Kübelwagen lifts 20 feet into the air, spinning like a child's toy. A staff officer stumbles out of the chateau's side door, arms raised to shield his face, and disappears in a sheet of orange flame. Kyle hauls back on the stick, climbing hard, the G-force crushing him into the seat. In his mirror, he sees the Mitchells arriving overhead, serene and terrible at 12,000 feet. Their Bombay doors yawn open in unison. Inside the chateau, von Schweppenberg has just reached the map room doorway when the first rockets turn the night into noon. The concussion slams him sideways. Plaster rains from the ceiling. A captain beside him screams once, then nothing. The general crawls through smoke that tastes of cordite and burning applewood. Then the bombs. 24 Mitchells release 192 500-pounders in one rippling salvo. They fall in a perfect rectangle around the headquarters, the 11-second fuses turning the orchard into a giant claymore mine. The ground heaves. The chateau's west wing simply ceases to exist, replaced by a roaring crater 50 feet deep. Sentries' old beams cartwheel skyward like matchsticks. Von Schweppenberg is thrown clear through a window. He lands hard among the roses, ears ringing, left arm hanging useless. Shrapnel has carved a furrow across his scalp. Blood mats the famous silver hair. He tries to stand. Can't. Through the smoke he sees General von Dons lying 10 yards away, one leg gone, eyes already glassy. The second wave of typhoons comes in now, lower, slower, cannons chattering. 20mm shells rake the survivors stumbling from the ruins. A signals lieutenant drags himself across the lawn, leaving a red trail, pleading in German for someone to shoot him and end it. Von Schweppenberg collapses back into the dirt. The sky is full of engines, Allied engines, no Luftwaffe, no help. Just the relentless, mechanical roar of absolute mastery. 4 minutes, that is all it took. 4 minutes to decapitate Panzergruppe West. When the last typhoon banks away toward the darkening channel, the chateau is a burning shell. 53 officers and 170 men lie dead or dying. Every radio truck is slag. Every map, every operations log, every attack order for the 11th of June is ash blowing across the fields of Normandy. The general stares up at the first stars appearing through the smoke and whispers the only words that fit, Mein Gott. They knew exactly where we were. And somewhere, 30 miles away in his own headquarters, Erwin Rommel hears the distant crumps of the bombardment and feels ice crawl down his spine. Because if they could do this to von Schweppenberg tonight, they can do it to anyone, anytime, anywhere. The age of the invincible panzer is over. The age of the Jebos has begun. The Headless Army, June 11th, 1944, 4:17, a hedgerow lane outside Tilly-sur-Seulles. Oberstleutnant Kurt Panzer Meyer, commander of the 25th Panzergrenadier Regiment of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, stands on the turret of his command panther, staring west through night glasses. The horizon flickers with distant artillery, but something is wrong. The radio net is dead, not jammed, dead. No word from Panzergruppe West since yesterday evening, no amended orders, no fuel allocations, no artillery coordination, nothing. Meyer is 23 years old and already a Knight's Cross winner. He has killed men with his bare hands on the Eastern Front. Tonight he feels a chill that has nothing to do with the pre-dawn mist. He keys the microphone again. Panzergruppe West, this is Meyer. Situation report and orders over. Static. Then a faint, panicked voice from 21st Panzer, far to the east. All higher HQ silent. We are attacking blind. God help us. At first light, the British launch Operation Perch. Montgomery's plan is simple. Hook west around Caen, seize Villers-Bocage, then wheel north and take the city from the rear. The only thing in their path is the Panzerlehr and the battered remnants of 12th SS. They are supposed to be reinforced today by a massive counterstroke, orchestrated by von Schweppenberg himself. Instead, they are leaderless. At Panzerlehr's command post near Lingavers, General Fritz Bayerlein, one of the finest tank commanders in the Wehrmacht, receives a runner on a motorcycle. The man is pale, covered in orchard soot. He salutes and hands over a blood-smeared scrap of paper, the only surviving fragment of last night's disaster. Bayerlein reads it twice, then crumples it in his fist. Von Schweppenberg schwör verwundet. Don's tot. Stab vernichtet. Bayerlein looks out at his waiting panthers and king tigers lined up in the orchards like steel statues. 400 tanks, the pride of the West, now commanded by ghosts. He turns to his operations officer. From this moment, we fight alone. Every battalion for itself. Hold until further orders. There will be no further orders. By noon, the sky is again black with typhoons. Without central coordination, German units bunch up on the few roads still intact, the Jebos feast. A single squadron of 24 rocket typhoons catches the 101st S-Heavy Tank Battalion, Tigers of Schwer SS Panzerabteilung 101. Refueling near point 112, in 8 minutes, 17 irreplaceable Tigers are burning hulks. The battalion commander radios a last, furious message. Where is the Luftwaffe? Where is our air cover? Before his own tank erupts. Across the front, the pattern repeats. A column of the 26th Panzergrenadier Regiment is caught in the open near Christet. P-47. Thunderbolts with 500-pound bombs and napalm tanks turn 3 kilometers of road into a single funeral pyre. Survivors stagger out, blackened, uniforms still burning, screaming about fire from heaven. At 14:30, a blood-soaked staff car skids into Bayerlein's command post. Inside is Leoger von Schweppenberg himself, bandaged like a mummy, one arm in a sling, face gray with pain and morphine. He has been smuggled out under a Red Cross flag by a loyal driver. Bayerlein snaps to attention. The general's voice is a croak. Bayerlein, the headquarters is gone. Everything. They knew our exact location. Down to the apple trees. He pauses, eyes unfocused. They listened to our radios. They photographed us from 30,000 feet. And then they erased us. Bayerlein waits for orders. There are none. Von Schweppenberg simply slumps against the car. I am relieved, he whispers. Berlin has already appointed a replacement. I am to be investigated. The Desert Fox himself arrives an hour later, face like stone. Rommel surveys the smoking horizon, the columns of black smoke rising where his panzers should be advancing. He says nothing for a long time. Finally, almost to himself, if we fight like this, in daylight, under their air fleets, the war in the West will be over in weeks. He turns to his aide, Major Hans Speidel. From now on, no movement by day. No headquarters within 50 kilometers of the front. Camouflage everything. Disperse, hide, survive. Rommel climbs back into his Hork staff car and drives away. As he passes a burning Panther, its turret blown 20 meters into a field, he does something no one has ever seen the Desert Fox do in public. He covers his face with his gloved hands. The counterattack that was meant to hurl the British into the sea never materializes. The front hardens into the bocage meat grinder that will bleed both sides white for the next 7 weeks. But the myth of German armored supremacy dies here, among the apple blossoms and burning steel of June 1944, because one raid, 4 minutes long, has just proven that no headquarters is safe, no concentration possible, no counterstroke feasible under the Allied sky. The panzers are not defeated by other tanks. They are murdered from above by men they never even see. The long death of the Panzer Armies, July 18, 1944. 5:10, a cornfield south of Setlay, Normandy. Hauptmann Heinz von Westernhagen, commander of Schwer SS Panzerabteilung 101, sits on the rear deck of his Tiger 231, smoking the last of his Russian tobacco. Around him, the remnants of the battalion, once 45 Tigers, now 9, squat under camouflage nets woven with corn stalks and apple branches. The engines are cold. They have been cold for 3 days. Moving by day is suicide. Moving by night is barely possible. Westernhagen's driver, Understoffer Willie Fay, whispers up from the hatch. Sir, typhoons again. High overhead, invisible in the dawn haze. The spotting aircraft circles, a little Oster or an American L-4 Piper Cub, no one is ever sure. They call them mayflies. They do not shoot. They simply watch, and within minutes the sky answers. The first rockets come at 5:27. 8 Typhoons ripple fire from 4,000 feet, gone before the first Flak 88 can traverse. 2 Tigers brew up instantly, hatches blowing open like tin cans. The rest scatter, crews sprinting for ditches as the second wave arrives with 1,000-pounders. The cornfield becomes a moonscape of craters and burning steel. Westernhagen dives into a shell hole, pressing his face into the Normandy dirt as the world detonates around him. When it ends, 6 Tigers remain. 3 are immobilized, tracks shredded. The battalion is finished as a fighting force. Westernhagen crawls from the hole, uniform torn, ears bleeding. He looks at the smoking wrecks and laughs, a short, bitter bark that frightens the younger crewmen more than the bombs. 6 weeks ago he believed in victory. Today he believes only in survival. This is the new normal. Panzergruppe West never recovers. Von Schweppenberg is gone, replaced first by the hapless Eberbach, then by others who last weeks instead of months. The headquarters scatters into the woods like frightened rabbits. 2 trucks here, a map tent there, never staying in one place more than a day. Radio silence is absolute. Orders travel by motorcycle courier on moonless nights. The proud Enigma machines are used only for the blandest traffic. Anything important is whispered face to face. The effect is paralyzing. On July 18th, the same morning Westernhagen loses his battalion, Operation Goodwood begins east of Cannes. German gunners on Borgwabus Ridge watch in horror as wave after wave of typhoons and thunderbolts obliterate their supporting Panthers before the British even come into sight. One battery commander radios. Enemy tanks advancing under an umbrella of aircraft. We have no chance. Request permission to withdraw. The reply never comes. The radio operator is already dead. By nightfall, Goodwood stalls in a sea of burning Shermans, but the cost to Germany is worse. Another 109 tanks gone, not to enemy guns, but to rockets and bombs from above. A week later, Operation Cobra smashes the American sector. The Panzerlehr, once the best-equipped division in France, is reduced to 15 tanks by carpet bombing. Fritz Bayerlein survives buried in his command post under 10 feet of rubble. When he is dug out, he is weeping uncontrollably. "It was the blackest day I have ever lived through," he tells captured American officers. Worse than Stalingrad. By August, the Normandy front collapses. What remains of the German armor, fewer than 200 operational tanks across the entire West, flees east in what becomes the Falaise pocket. The Jobos hunt them without mercy. Roads choke with burning vehicles, dead horses, and men who simply sat down in the ditches and waited for the end. On August 21st, the pocket closes. In 19 days of hell, the Allies destroy or capture 500 tanks, 1,500 artillery pieces, and 50,000 prisoners. The German army in France is effectively annihilated. Leoger von Schweppenberg, recovering in a Berlin hospital, receives a visitor, an SS major with a briefcase and a cold smile. The general is accused of defeatism for having written, in a private letter, that the war was lost the moment the Allies achieved total air supremacy. He is stripped of command, pensioned off, and quietly disappears into obscurity. He lives until 1974, long enough to watch. American tanks roll across television screens in Vietnam and wonder if anyone ever learned the lesson he paid for in blood. That no army, no matter how brave or well-armed, can fight when the sky itself is the enemy. In the end, the greatest armored force the world had ever seen is not defeated by Zhukov or Patton or Montgomery. It is murdered, piece by piece, day after day, by young men in cockpit bubbles who never once hear the screams of the crews they incinerate. And on quiet nights in the 1950s, old Panzer veterans still wake sweating, hearing the whistle of rockets that never quite goes away, and